Yeah, what's good? It's just Joe here, and today we're going to be doing episode 3 of my series titled Screwed. This time we will be looking at Cartoon Network and all of its shortcomings as a network. I don't want to waste any time, so let's get straight into the bitch. Oh, I did forget 2 things though. I will not be discussing in detail about CN Real. Why? Well, it's simple. There are millions and millions of YouTubers who already talked about the pitfalls of what was CN Real, far better than I ever could. So instead of just regurgitating info, I'm gonna move past that, and if you want to listen to it, then you can look for it after finishing this video. Stick around, please stick around. Also, this video has a lot of examples, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot. Like, holy shit, it was unbelievable. So expect part 2, because there's no actual way to speak on around 57 shows in the same video and still have the same viewer retention. Now, let's move on to the video.
Does something seem weird to you guys?
No.
Now, before we go to more show-specific examples, let's look at some more general examples of this, starting with the most fucked era of Cartoon Network ever, that being the late 2000s. Outside the whole CN Real debacle, around this time the network started to heavily push Ben 10 and his Canadian imported shows such as Johnny Test and Total Drama. And while it is good for people who are fans of the shows, it was not good for those other shows who were giving very shoddy treatment by the network, such as episodes airing out of order, shows suffering from shifts in its time slot, and also the multiple shows that were cancelled to put those shows on, like Juniper Lee and Class of 3000. It got to a point where by the summer of 2008, all original shows on the network that hadn't premiered the previous year and was not named Laszlo, Ben 10, or Courage would be removed from the schedule, even despite some shows like Foster's Home still need to air new episodes at that point, with them only doing that by having one-day event marathons. This would slowly be rectified by the start of 2009, but still just wow. Now, why was Cartoon Network doing these changes all of a sudden? Well, let's come back to 2007 and let's look at Boston and the infamous Boston Moon Knights bomb scares. For those who don't know, to promote the Aqua Teen Hunger Force movie, like Brighton, the Moon Knights would be hung all over Boston and other cities. However, specifically in Boston, many would mistake these for bombs, leading to a citywide shutdown. And after all that bad press, Jim Samples, Khaki Jones, and Jay Bastian would step down from the network and be replaced by Stuart Snyder and other newer executives who are not endearing themselves to the creators of the shows, such as when they removed the no advertising clause, which became key for those who wanted more creative control. However, in the start of the 2010s, Cartoon Network entered a renaissance phase with shows like Gumball, Regular Show, and Adventure Time, as well as stuff like getting rid of the CN Real, which really significantly improved the network's reputation. And then we had the latter half of the decade where it started going downhill fast, as around 2015 the network started making questionable decisions when it came to scheduling, such as putting acquired shows on weekend dead slots, as well as infamously turning Teen Titans Go into their version of SpongeBob, they would milk the shit out of the show on scheduling every day. There are also people who accuse Cartoon Network executives of hating action and story-driven cartoons, since those shows seem to suffer the worst. Even Man of Action Studios, who created that awful 2016 Ben 10 reboot, admitted that they had no choice but to make the show that way to follow the network's trends. Going back to talk about Teen Titans Go for a bit, Teen Titans Go was at its lowest at this point, as the network went way too overboard when it came to promotion in the expense of its other shows, which would have suffered from either being pushed back or preempted so they could have Teen Titans Go reruns, but hey, that show gets a lot of ratings! This did not help the show's reputation, as many people were already divisive on the show, with some saying good and some saying bad. However, at this point, the bad outweighed the good. I mean, you could tell from how many people were shitting on the show on YouTube at the time. Jesus fucking Christ. Also, what did not help with the reputation was many people seeing this show as the inspiration behind other reboots like the 2016 Powerpuff Girls, the 2016 Ben 10, and Thundercats Roar, while long-running and adored shows like Adventure Time, regular show, and Steven Universe were getting shafted in the reruns. While it's because at the time of its network's peak in popularity, Turner Broadcasting was going through a restructuring and decided to remove Stuart Snyder as CEO and replace him with Christina Miller. However, just like Stuart Snyder in 2010, around 2018, Christina Miller was significantly improving the network, as she would make decisions such as lessening the reruns of Teen Titans Go. Then came the 2020s, which saw Christina Miller be replaced by Tom Asham, and just like Christina and Stewart, did not start off the best way, when he made some changes such as introducing Cartoonito, which is very divisive among the fan base. Some like it, some don't. They would also have a blog called Acme Nights, which would have been fine if they decided not to test out the waters of airing acquired live-action shows such as Family Matters and bizarrely the Carbonaro thing. What's next? Are they going to air the Impractical Jokers? Are they going to show that one episode of Murray gets fingered in front of national TV?
Okay, so far?
You have a finger in your ass
All right.
on television!
On Cartoon Network.
Another decisive decision was to increase the hours of Adult Swim due to its rise in popularity. Also, side note, Adult Swim, please bring back Checkered Past. That was my introduction to Billy Mandy, Courage, and Eddie, and I loved every minute of it. Also, around 2018 to 2020, a lot of CN shows were being cancelled, mostly due to the US government holding up the merger of Warner Media, most notably OKKO and Trick Moon, as well as that Infinity Train and Season 2 of Summer Camp Island were forced to move to HBO Max. Speaking of HBO Max, probably the most problematic thing going for it right now is how HBO Max treats its Cartoon Network shows, aka they don't at all. As over the years, hell, even over the months, the amount of Cartoon Network shows that have been pulled by HBO Max has been crazy. Even stuff like Gumball, Regular Show, and Chowder got removed. While you could argue that they were just waiting for it to be renewed, they never renewed it, they just completely removed it. Now that we got that out the way, let's move on to actual specific show fuckovers.
If you like this stupid man named Joe's content, make sure to subscribe to his channel and like the video. Now sit back, strap in, and enjoy the really long show.
Starting with all fresh TV shows, excluding Total Drama. While Total Drama seems to be treated great by the network, the rest of fresh TV shows that aired on Cartoon Network is not a great example. Starting with 16, as for some reason CN would air the episodes extremely out of order. For example, Season 1, Episode 27 was the Cartoon Network series premiere in October of 08, while the actual first episode aired in March of 2009. 16 almost became infamous for some episodes being banned due to some content like having references to homosexuality, fuck off Cartoon Network, and there being mentions of feminine products. They would air the final season from April to June of 2010, with one of the episodes being removed due to a homosexual character. Sincerely fuck off Cartoon Network, and it would continue airing reruns until early 2011. Then we have Stoked, which started off on a better footing than 16, as at least all but 2 of the episodes aired in order. Then came early November, however, when the show was bizarrely placed on a hiatus until June of 2010 to briefly take over 16's time slot. Then the show was just taking off that July and was replaced by reruns of Mystery Incorporated, which by the way saw new episodes air that same day earlier. And it just never came back, leaving the final 4 episodes of Season 1 and the entirety of Season 2 to be on-aired in the US. And finally, there was Groj Band, which had its first half of its season aired across the summer of 2013. Then it just stopped, despite having several episodes to still air. The show did come back almost a year later on its mobile app. It got pulled a couple months later. It did then return in June on its mobile app. Thankfully, it did move to Boomerang, which guess is an upgrade, and after it was finally over, it got removed entirely. The Powerpuff Girls 2016 suffered heavy, and you're gonna hear this a couple times throughout this journey, but it was maybe for the right reasons, but still it happened. In early 2017, the show was mysteriously moved from its 7:45 p.m. Friday time slot to a 5:30 Sunday time slot that April, possibly due to the show's horrible reputation and it being a commercial flop as well. Its specials were not handled any better, as the Power of 4 special was only given 1 week of advertising, with only one commercial promoting it, which led to it only garnering 0.98 million in viewership. This also likely played a factor to its next sequel special, Never Been Bliss, being given actual zero advertising, resulting in the special receiving an awful 0.577 million viewers, which is a 59% drop off from the original debut of Bliss. Then, after June 2019, the show was just gone from the network altogether. Honorable mention to the original show, by the way, as the original was cancelled just a mere 5 episodes into season 1, with the rest being burnt off across the summer of 2004. Then the network just discovered 2 unaired episodes from the 5th season and aired them back to back in March of 2005. One of the worst examples of Cartoon Network fucking a show over super hard is Sheep in the Big City, as generally there's no great example out there than Sheep in the Big City. Things started off promising enough, as its initial 7 episodes would start off with good ratings between November 2000 and January 2001. Then the initial warning signs showed up, as episodes 8 and 9 were held back until March. Then the real trouble started when the final 4 episodes of the season were also held until June to July and placed on Sunday evenings. The show was then bizarrely cancelled, although due to enough fan support, the show was brought back for season 2 that September. Yes, I am aware of the date. And started airing again in February, with it once again airing on Sunday evenings before then going on another hiatus in January 2002, and then the final 9 episodes of the show would be burnt off in the coming months, with it having a time slot of Sunday nights at 9 p.m, with reruns airing on Cartoon Fridays at 11 p.m, where the main demographic would be asleep. Then the show would end that April and has been largely forgotten about ever since. While it's unknown what caused the change in season 2, there are apparent rumors that the reasons why it was treated this way is that Sheep was renewed around the same time as that, and Cartoon Network was fearing of bringing back the show, which portrays the military as comedic villains while the Pentagon was in huge disrepair and the country was preparing for war. Again, it's never been confirmed, so don't take it as factual, but I've heard about that rumor, so I thought I would share it. Hi Puffy Amiyumi started off extremely strong, as it aired in a good time slot of Friday at 7:30 as part of Cartoon Fridays, had daily reruns, and even had a Macy's Thanksgiving parade float. It went from that to being cancelled in late 2006, and out of the 39 episodes to be made, 34 aired in the US, with the other 5 airing in different countries, with Surf's Up being outright banned after the Indian Ocean 2004 tsunami. And while there's a common consensus that Puffy was mainly cancelled due to a management shakeup which led to Sam Register leaving the company, there's another rumor floating around which, again, take it with a grain of salt, that states that Sony could have had a part into its cancellation, as Puffy's label is Sony Music, and Sony stopped exporting the duo out weirdly around this time. It went to a point where Ubisoft wanted to use a Puffy song for the second Raving Rabbids game, but was only allowed to use it in the Japan release. Then they were caught in an international rights problem, as while Sony Music had the Japan rights, Warner Music Group had the worldwide rights. Like some of the examples I pointed out earlier, the life and times of Juniper Lee started off decently, as it promoted decently enough around the first season, then it went downhill, when by season 2 it was shuffled around the schedule and there was barely any notice of when a new episode came on. And surprise, surprise, when season 3 came around, they just shut all advertising off entirely. With the real nail of the coffin was when the final 2 episodes were relegated to their streaming service before the show got cancelled. Totally Spies is a weird case, as it went from adored to reviled to adored by the network all over again. Cartoon Network initially picked up the show in 2003 after ABC Family canceled it initially after season 2, and CN made sure to take great care of it by having tons of promotion for it across its 3 seasons. It had under the CN umbrella on top of the movie, Team Galaxy, and the Amazing Spy spin-off. It even aired in Magoozy. Remember Magoozy? It really was the family-friendly tune-up. Then season 6 came along, and for some reason, Cartoon Network just would not pick it up anymore. In fact, no American show would touch season 6. It is a bit understandable for seeing it, as this was around the time of when Teen Titans Go oversaturation was at its peak, but the fact that no other network would pick up season 6 of the show is kind of wild. However, bizarrely, Cartoon Network then, years later, chose to pick up the revival season, so I guess there's a happy ending, but it's kind of weird. Now we talk about the Garfield show, where season 3 saw the show air on weekdays at 10 a.m., where the target audience is usually at school. Now, while the other 2 seasons did also air at that time slot, it had the advertising to back it up and give it those ratings. However, season 3 had very poor advertising, and thus ratings took a dip. Then season 4 was downgraded to Boomerang in 2015, and then the rest of the season was burnt off throughout the summer. Then the 5th and final season, which was only a 4-part special, so I don't know why this counts as a whole new season, aired only one time in October 2016, and then the show was removed 3 months later. Victor and Valentino has been compared to Alan Gregory in the way that their networks treated them. Except, in this case, one of them was reportedly pretty decent, and the other one was reportedly Alan Gregory. After initially being treated very well by the network in its first season, the network turned on the show in season 2, as season 2 saw little advertising outside of the new Saturdays block, and their initial rerun slots were being replaced by Craig of the Creek, Mau Mau, and Teen Titans Go. By the way, if you haven't noticed yet, there should be a counter on the screen for how many times I've said the words Teen Titans Go. Oh, there's another one. But anyways, this ultimately left the show with a measly 30 minutes of airtime per week by July 2020. Season 2 wasn't even put on demand, and there was very little reruns of it after the fact. This did get somewhat fixed around the 3rd season, as it was in the Saturday morning slot, with reruns being on Tuesdays at prime time. But then in August of 2022, not only was it one of the many shows that got removed from HBO Max, but it was then cancelled despite the crew's intentions of having a 4th season. When we talk about the Mount Rushmore Cartoon Network, 2 names spring to mind: Adventure Time and Regular Show. 2 icons of the networks, 2 big reasons how Cartoon Network bounced back from the shit show that was CN Real, launched them into what we call the Renaissance era. Even they weren't safe, as during their last years as an active show, the 2 was given the time slot of weekdays at 7:30 to 8 p.m. in February 2015. And while CN did give them 1 extra time slot for reruns in March, it didn't really fix the big picture. And by mid-2015, there was no reruns of shows except for the occasional bomb week, where a week's worth of shows would air from Monday through Friday. And who took over this time slot for the reruns? I'll give y'all 10 seconds for y'all to guess who it could be. It's Teen Titans Go. Then in 2016, it was confirmed that both shows would end after 9 and 8 seasons respectively. And when it comes to regular shows, actually the creators JJ and Quintel's decision, Adventure Time did want a 10th season. Then heading into the fall, regular show would be brought back to its 7:30 slot, with reruns of Adventure Time returning to the lineup alongside Ninjago. This was during a period where Teen Titans Go was receiving a cutback on the amount of reruns it was given. To put things into perspective, Baby Looney Tunes and even Courage was given a 1-hour time slot each. Next we have Clarence, and yes, I know what the creator did, but that doesn't change the fact that it got screwed. Due to not being as popular as other shows on the network, like Teen Titans Go, Clarence Season 3 was set to be its last. However, throughout its whole 3rd season run, Cartoon Network just completely pretended like Season 3 was set to air, as it would not do certain things like letting people know when new episodes would arrive even after they aired in other countries. Reruns of the show were also going down around the February of 2017. Ninjago might be the most blatant example ever, as during its first 2 seasons, it was given a great time slot of Wednesday at 8 p.m. and had plenty of rerun time. However, when season 2 ended, each season saw reruns get cut more and more until the end of season 13, when Cartoon Network just stopped showing Ninjago, which meant that the Island miniseries and season 14 through 15 was a Netflix exclusive. When we talked about fucked over CN shows, this show comes up a lot, which is Infinity Train. This show was fucked over from the jump, as the pilot that was set to determine whether it was going to be a full series or not aired at 6 in the morning. Thankfully, CN renewed it anyway, and it was a very big success for the network, pulling in great ratings and gaining acclaim by fans. However, things went downhill when working on season 5, as creator Owen Dennis wanted the season to focus on an adult woman when Cartoon Network wanted to be a kid character because they thought that kids would be more invested if other kid characters were given more attention. And as a result, despite there apparently being a full script for season 5 and the creator wanting the show to go on to have 8 seasons, the show was cancelled after the first 4. It was also one of the many shows that got the HBO Max removal treatment. Symbiotic Titans started off as part of the Friday night action block. Then randomly at episode 12, they moved the show to Wednesdays at 7 p.m., which is a very wonky time slot to be in. Then, without any heads up, the final 3 episodes were moved to Saturday mornings at 9:30. Then it was cancelled. So, what happened? Well, Cartoon Network didn't like the fact that it was not selling any toys, despite the fact that there were no toys. While it's not confirmed, there is speculation as to the reason behind it, such as toy companies refused to produce it due to having a female lead character for what would be classified as a quote-unquote boys show, which would make it unprofitable. There's nothing like some good old-fashioned gender profiling. I'm being sarcastic, by the way. The ultimate coup de grace of it all, and I'm not talking about Finn Balor, is that the animation team behind decided to call it quits after losing passion behind the show, with the creator Gennady Tartakovsky, apologies for the butchering of the name because I probably fucked it up so hard right there, exited Cartoon Network to work for Sony Pictures. And given the fact that they would also give female leads of Young Justice toys, these seemed a bit shoddy by Cartoon Network. Also ended on a cliffhanger while also being considered tax write-off now. Just fuck, man. Sometimes it's not even just shows that get screwed, but whole ass blocks. For instance, the DC Nation block. Its 2 biggest shows as a part of DC Nation was Young Justice and Green Lantern, and both of them would be screwed by the network with the cartoons. And granted, one of them was more screwed than the other one, and there's a third show that comes. But just stay with me here. So, for starters, Young Justice spiraled off the bat, as it took more than a full calendar year to air in full, because after the first 9 episodes aired between January to March of 2011, when it was time to air the 10th episode on June 3rd, it was inexplicably delayed for 6 fucking months. The show would then come back in September, where it would air 9 more episodes, before once again getting delayed for 3 more months, and thankfully after the break, the show would air the whole season in full. However, by that point, the delay went on for so long that the season finale aired just 1 week before the season 2 premiere. Meanwhile, Green Lantern would air its first 13 episodes without any form of interruption. Young Justice, all the while, was airing its first 7 episodes of season 2 before it got delayed for almost 4 months. And when it was scheduled to come back alongside the new Green Lantern arc, in a last-minute decision, CN decided to pull the plug temporarily on DC Nation until January 2013. And when I say last minute, I mean last minute. It was so bad that the showrunners weren't even told about it. Then, 3 weeks after both shows were airing episodes, it was announced that both shows would be cancelled. And by announced, I mean they didn't list Young Justice and Green Lantern as returning shows in its 2013 fall lineup, and the fans were fierce about it. And there was a lot of fans, so much so that Young Justice was constantly listed as part of the top 10 highest rated shows of the network weekly. This was before and after the multiple hiatuses. That's how much people loved these shows. And there was so much outpour about these shows being cancelled that ultimately led to Young Justice returning for 2 more seasons for 2019 to 2022. Green Lantern, on the other hand, wasn't. So who were the shows that Cartoon Network brought on to revamp the DC Universe lineup? Be Aware of the Batman and a tiny show called Teen Titans Go, with one of them being a mega hit and the other one being Beware the Batman, as Cartoon Network might have treated Batman worse than Young Justice, and that's fucking saying something. Well, you see, it couldn't even deliver half of a season before it was pulled from the lineup after 11 episodes. And it never came back to TV. And who was the show that replaced Beware the Batman? It was another rerun of fucking Teen Titans Go! I'm slowly going more and more insane as this video goes on. Not only was the Titans given 2 slots as part of DC Nation, but it was also given a prime time slot as well, so there's something. However, there was clouds parting the horizons as Konami was given the clearance to air the whole show, even the on-air ones of Beware the Batman. However, after getting through to 19 out of the 26 episodes, Cartoon Network made yet another last-minute decision by deciding to make the show yet another tax write-off, meaning that they legally cannot broadcast the show again. Thankfully, before it was finalized, Konami decided to do a last-minute marathon of the remaining episodes. There's still one question to be asked as to why did all of this happen? Well, according to Paul Dini, who was a creator on another action show at the time, Talent Prep, the reason for why it went downhill was because of something I mentioned earlier, with that being gender profiling, as Cartoon Network wanted the action shows to target a huge boy demographic. However, when shows like Young Justice and Green Lantern saw a majority girl demographic, Cartoon Network panicked due to a concern that major toy companies would not want to partner with them, and as a result, canceled them. Another DC cartoon that got screwed over was Justice League Action, as it was actually doomed from the start, as outside of a single commercial that also primarily featured, you guessed it, Teen Titans Go, the show would have actual jack shit when it comes to advertising premiere, with the only real advertising being a series of kids meal toys. The premiere aired in December 2016 as a reasonable time slot of Fridays at 6 p.m. However, it was soon dumped to Saturday mornings at 7:30 a.m. Then it went to straight up 7 a.m. by August, where the target audience would still be asleep. And here's the fun part. In the press release for Action, while it was stated that it was going to air at Saturday mornings, it never specified what time in the morning it would be. However, to give them credit, it was broadcast with minimal breaks throughout its run. Now take that credit back when you realize that JLA got into a hiatus at the end of 2017, where the last 6 episodes didn't air in the States until May, and it would air at 6:15 a.m. Now, let's take a break from DC to talk about Time Squad. The situation behind Time Squad is very bizarre, as the show seemed to be doing very well, as not only was it a part of Cartoon Fridays, but it was also pulling in ratings such as a 5.0. The issue that came from Time Squad, which ultimately led to its cancellation, was due to corporate shuffling, according to Rob Paulson, who voiced Buck on the show. And while it's not confirmed, judging by the timelines, the shuffling could have been from the merge of AOL and Time Warner. And while that last part is just me speculating, what is true is that after news broke that the show would be cancelled after season 2, CN decided to bury the show as much as it can, as it didn't take long for Cartoon Network to misplace new episodes and gave the show several hiatuses. Then in 2004, as a bonus fuck you, the show was given a depth slot of too damn early. Hell, it was partnered with reruns of Captain Planet at the time. Next up is Chopsaki Chooks, a name so hideous that I had to actually Google whether or not Chook is a racial slur. Thankfully it isn't, but the main character designs tell a bit of a different story. Also, this show was shit, so this one deserved in my opinion. And it's very quick, so basically, despite having a very consistent weekly time slot during season 1, the show was not released for season 2, and while I mostly think it's because the show is very much shit on a stick, it also could have something to do with the fact that the show was given the Firefly treatment of being very much out of order. Now, going from a bad show to one of my personal favorites with Foster's Home, or more specifically, Foster's Home during its run on the rebooted 2012 Cartoon Planet. As during its run there was only 5 segments that went from the show to Cartoon Planet. Now, that's a bit annoying, but let me take you back to the OG run, and in June of 2008, where all reruns of the show that wasn't on holidays was removed. On top of that, Foster's last 5 episodes would air on a single day in May of 2009. Next, we got a big one to talk about in the form of Steven Universe. This one is so big that someone commented in one of my TikTok posts, follow me on TikTok by the way, and saying that Steven Universe had the worst hiatuses. And after researching, he's right, as it was so bad it was actually given a name by the fan base. Steven Bombs. Now, what is Steven Bombs? And before I answer, no, it's not a play-on for Jaeger Bombs, but it is a term to be used when the show would air 5 new episodes in a week span, and there would be no new episodes for months on end. This is especially bad when you consider the fact that Steven Universe is a very plot-heavy show. It happened so many times that there was situations like the entire Out of This World arc of the show being on their mobile app a month before the intended date, and failed to tell anyone about it until the episodes were moved from the app, where they would have to watch it by pirating. The network also had a habit of spoiling big things. For example, when the season 5 finale got spoiled via a podcast clip posted by Cartoon Network, the crew spent weeks on social media telling fans to not spoil the episodes to other people. Then, in a strange form of irony, the episodes got delayed overseas due to the fear of leaks, when they themselves were the ones who leaked it. The show would start getting better treatment towards the end as they increased the amount of reruns, and they even did a marathon for Steven to lead up to the new TV movie. Then we have the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2017 show, where at the time it was constantly reran, even alongside the likes of Gumball and Teen Titans Go. However, due to some poor ratings, the show was pulled in April to be replaced by Ben 10 2016 reboots. The show would return in September, and then it got removed a week later. And with the exception of a Christmas special that aired on Saturday afternoons with no advertising, the show never came back to CN. Furthermore, the majority of the episodes got removed from the app, and the rest of the show got banished to the Boomerang app. Honestly, I've never seen a bigger demotion. Going from Cartoon Network on TV to the Boomerang app is crazy. Shockingly enough, though, this show lasted 2 seasons because it saw better success than its native Canada. Yeah, this show is a Canadian property. Ain't that something? Robotomy might be the most infamous non-CN real show in Cartoon Network history for how fucking short it lasted. This show barely had advertising, was given very little airtime, and only aired 10 episodes before it got cancelled, which makes it the shortest lived show in Cartoon Network history at a whopping 3 months. Well, what was the reason? It was due to the fact that Cartoon Network just couldn't get any international networks to carry the show, mostly due to the violence of the show. Generator Rex is a classic case of the show being pulled before a season finale. What was interesting though is that the show ran its course on iTunes before Cartoon Network would air the final episodes 10 months later, with 2 episodes just being skipped over. Got another Canadian import next with Atomic Betty, as it initially started on the Bigoozy block as one of its main shows, before then getting moved from time slot to time slot to time slot to the point where it aired Saturdays at 7 a.m. Then in the middle of the second season, the show was just pulled, leaving the rest of the season, as well as season 3 to not air in the US until the Hub picked it up. Next, we got the Magic Mighty Source, and again, full disclaimer, yes, I know what the creator did, yes, he fucking sucks, but me talking about the show does not mean I support it. He can burn in the depths. But anyways, Mighty Magic Source. What started off as a series of online shorts turned into a full series by 2016, with the show being very divisive among viewers. But you know what's not a divisive thing to say? Cal Carosa can go fuck himself. But back to the show. It was initially extremely well promoted by the network. However, around early 2017, it started to turn as the show would slowly vanish from the schedule. It would come back in July, however, it wasn't promoted as well as it used to. And once the new wave of episodes finished, the show was once again removed from the lineup, with the final 5 episodes of Season 1 premiering on the website before the network's version. Season 2 would then begin as soon after the Season 1 finale at 6:15 a.m. Then came a point where the remaining episodes of the show would become available on the app in August of 2018, but not air on TV until May of 2019, where they were all burnt off in the span of 2 weeks at 11:30 a.m. And once more with feeling, fuck you, Kyle. Craig of the Creek, while being seen as one of the more adored shows on CN recently, it started to go bad in 2022 after the merger between Warner Bros. And Discovery happened. Season 5 episode order got cut in half and would end up being the final season. Class of 3000 is also a very infamous example, especially around season 2, where there was a slim chance of none of there being reruns by the fall of 2007, with the final episodes premiering unadvertised as a part of a marathon in May of 2008. And there's a reason for why I put final in quotations, is because it was not the final episode, as episodes 27 and 28 just didn't air at all. Anyway, god damn, man, this video was long. You could see why it took so long and why it took split it up in 2 parts. But anyways, that's all for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Keep in mind that there is a second part coming soon, so if you want to get notifications for when that happens, make sure to subscribe. We're almost at 1,000 now. We're almost down. I can taste it. I can nearly taste it, y'all. Make sure to follow me on my social and have a blessed day.